All right, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. This is Dr. E from today's day is November 23rd, 2022. If you're listening to the sound of my voice, that means you were blessed to see another day, and for that, all praise, honor, and glory is due to the Most High God of Israel for now and forever. All right, Shalom, everyone. Welcome to all my new subscribers. And if you just get into the channel, please make sure you hit that subscribe button and select the notification bell and click all, so that way you'll be notified every time I upload a new presentation. I want to thank everyone for their support, for commenting on the videos and liking the videos. That all helps in the viewership as we continue to push through this whole algorithm nightmare that I've been faced with since I recommitted myself a month and a half, almost 2 months ago now. But either way, it's all good. All praises due. Um, I want to talk about you know something that's never really talked about, and that's the fact that Ishmael, being the firstborn son of Abraham, and how he's often overlooked and never really talked about, and that relationship, between Ishmael and Isaac, they're brothers. Some people would call them half brothers because they had the same father and different mothers, but I mean, culturally, where I'm from in the South, we don't play that half brother stuff. If you got the same mom, raised together, you brothers and sisters. That's just how it is. But, I guess biologically, maybe genetically, you're not whole if you don't have the same mother and father. I mean, how could you be, genetically speaking, right? But either way, I think that, sometimes, a lot of times, not sometimes, Ishmael gets kind of pushed to the side. He's thought of as the kind of bastard child, the son who's not as important, quote unquote, as Isaac. Isaac was the one that the Most High had his covenant through, and and I'm sure that made Ishmael feel a certain way because that's the main reason why Sarah wanted him and his mom gone, because she caught him mocking uh, Isaac, making fun of him or whatever the case may be. And so, going back to even Cain and Abel, man. I mean, given I always say Cain and Abel gave us our first recorded murder in history. But Cain killed Abel. He killed his brother, not because Abel did anything to him, but just out of sheer jealousy, of Abel. He felt that Abel was favored by God, and he was jealous of that. He wanted that, and I tell people all the time, and that you have to be careful of that jealousy spirit. That jealousy spirit is probably like the oldest spirit in existence. I mean, that jealousy spirit is what killed that young lady, Shanquella Robinson. Rest in peace to her. I mean, people, you'd be surprised. People are standing right next to you, man. You think of your friends, and they straight up jealous of you. Even some of your own brothers and sisters, they're jealous of you. Listen to those little hating comments that they make. There's some truth in jokes. A lot of them, a lot of the times, it don't be jokes. It be how they really feel, and they try to pass it off as a joke. But anyway, this kind of lesson today, this presentation is dealing with the animosity, that clearly Ishmael had towards, Isaac, and Isaac being the quote unquote, basically the chosen one. And, I mean, I'm pretty sure he did feel a way. He was Abraham's firstborn son. And I guess it didn't, I don't know if he knew that the God told Abraham that he was going to make him a nation. But the Ishmaelites are so much more similar than not to the Israelites. And I don't know if they understood that or saw that. He just took it as a slight. He kind of basically put all that energy against Isaac and ultimately Jacob, the children of Israel. The chosen elect, the chosen nation. And I mean, as a human being, I mean, I'm pretty sure he did feel a way. But Ishmael, he had 12 sons too, same as Jacob. People don't talk about that. He had 12 tribes. The so-called Arabs today, they try to make it seem like he's not the progenitor of the so-called Arab Muslims, and he is. I'm going to get into that. So, today is kind of going to be dedicated to that whole dynamics of that relationship between Ishmael and Isaac, the Ishmaelites and the Israelites, and how that all coincides together. All right, so let's get it. All right, we're going to start here with the foretelling of Ishmael's birth. right? We're gonna start in Genesis, book of Genesis, chapter 16, starting at verse 11. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction. And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. And she called the name of the Lord that spake unto her, Thou God seest me. For she said, Have I also here looked after him that seeth me? Wherefore the well was called Belahori. Behold, it's between Kadesh and Bered. Now let's go back up to verse 12, when he says, when the angel tells her, and he will be a wild man, his hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. Now, you know, for all the similarities of the Ishmaelites and the Israelites, the one glaring difference between the two nations of people is that the Ishmaelites have never been conquered. The Ishmaelites have never been slaves. Let's think about that. That's the one glaring difference to me between the Ishmaelites and the Israelites. But every pretty much every nation is either jealous or hate the Arabs, so-called Arab Muslims today. Some are jealous of their riches, their power, and they don't look at that. The children of Israel are on the bottom, man. We I mean, in terms of when I say the children, I'm speaking collectively. I'm not speaking for a couple of Negroes here and there that are doing well. That doesn't even factor into the overall you know picture I'm talking about as far as us as a people. I've said it before, now I'll say it again. The small percentage of us that are doing well financially or whatever the case may be pales in comparison to the majority of us that are living in abject poverty with no real power structure. We're not in control anywhere really, right? So um, there are definitely more similarities. Now, some people take that he will be a wild man. I've heard it say he will be a wild ass of a man. I think anyway, I won't deal with that. But Ishmael, the spirit of him, he's a rider. I mean, he ain't no joke, man. Two women gave him his 12 sons. Fatima, and I'm gonna bring that up. And Fatima and Aisha gave him his 12 sons. And I'm gonna deal with this in the next segment. The general consensus is that so-called Arab Muslims today, they don't like to acknowledge or want to acknowledge that Ishmael is actually the progenitor of that whole so-called Arab Muslim movement. And I'm gonna bring that up right now, real quick. That's the next segment. Okay. I don't know if y'all can read this, but I'm gonna read along and read a majority of it, if not all for you. But this is the general consensus that the so-called Arab Muslims feel about Ishmael. On the one hand, they try to say he's not the progenitor, but they always try to tie the Prophet Muhammad, who's the prophet of Islam, to him. So it's like they're trying to have it both ways, talking out the side of their neck. But anyway, let me see right now. It says the question is, are Muslims the descendants of Ishmael? Right? Pretty straightforward, right? And I screenshotted this response because this is the general consensus of those so-called Arab Muslims, the ones that are in power today, that look more olive skinned and smooth, silky beards or whatever. The thought of them. This is how they really think and feel, right? He said, Muslims are not descended from a single person. See, leading with that, everything they say after that, I'm not even trying to hear because that's BS, man. And again, they do not like to give the Ishmael, a black man, the props of being the progenitor of their whole movement, their whole existence. They just don't. It says Muslims are not descended from a single person. That's a lie. That's like saying like Israelites are not descended from Jacob. We know that's not the truth. Does it sound familiar? That's not the truth. That's a lie. 12, Jacob had 12 sons, man. Joseph had two, and it put them together, the house of Joseph with Ephraim and Manasseh. Not veering off, but just saying. Back to the general consensus says they come from many different ethnic backgrounds. See, you see that? They kill me with that. So they come from many different ethnic backgrounds, since it is a set of beliefs that anyone can adhere to and not and ethnicity. You can become Muslim by saying one sentence. I mean, which is true, but not really, not really. You have to take what they call a shahada. And if for those of you that know me, know a part of my testimony is I was actually a Sunni Muslim. Before, after I was, 5% and all that, I was actually a Sunni Muslim. Jumu'ah on Fridays, Salat 5 times a day. So I'm in a unique position to even speak on this, right? So then he goes on to say, having said that, Muhammad, the last prophet of Islam, and the one whose actions and narrations Muslims follow, was according to Muslim sources descended from Ishmael. See, now that right there directly contradicts him saying that the Muslims didn't descend from a single person. So if the Muslims didn't descend from a single person, why would you try to connect your prophet Muhammad to Ishmael? Why? Why? I mean, so basically, you're saying he's not that important. So if he's not that important, why are you trying to put Prophet Muhammad, next to Ishmael? Because in their hearts, they know that Ishmael is the progenitor of their whole race. They hold that whole nation started with Ishmael, man. Period. Point blank. And I feel a way about that because we as Israelites, we get treated the same way. They try to do us the same way. They do and say everything they can to take away from the fact of who we really are by our nationality, right? And let me continue. It says the traditional Islamic narration of the story is as follows: Abraham, based on divine revelation, brought Hagar and a very young Ishmael into the middle of nowhere. First of all, dude, what are you talking about? See, this is the madness, and people read stuff like this and take it as fact and regurgitate it. Before you know, people really believe in this foolishness. First of all, Ishmael is the firstborn son of Abraham. Hagar had Ishmael by Abraham. That's he laid seed with her because it was thought that Sarah couldn't have any children, and she was on board with it. So Hagar, the so-called bondwoman, she was Hamitic, she was Egyptian, gave birth to Ishmael by way of Abraham. All right. So let me just say this, and I'm not even gonna go into all this, but what I wanted to kind of, you know, um, corner or cover, if you will, was a general consensus of Arab Muslims feeling that Ishmael is not the progenitor of their nation. So when I talk about the animosity, with people that people have with the so-called Arab Muslims, whatever the case may be, and the animosity that Ishmael had with against Isaac. It wasn't so much with Isaac because there's nothing that tells us that Isaac had an issue with Ishmael. There's nothing that suggests that Isaac did. Now, someone, if there's a book, an accepted book somewhere, whatever, said Isaac had some kind of beef with Ishmael himself, please bring it forth, bring it out. But I haven't seen or ever read anywhere where Isaac had a problem with Ishmael. Ishmael was and then a lot of Christians, they speak against him negatively, talking about they want them an Isaac, not an Ishmael. Saying stuff like that, just kind of like I said, like Ishmael was the bastard child, like he was what he used to say back in the day, the red-headed stepchild. But no, he wasn't, man, and that's why it grieved Abraham at his heart when his wife wanted him to tell Hagar and him when he wanted them to send him away or whatever, and it grieved him. Because at the end of the day, guess what? Ishmael is still his son, man. Like, what are y'all talking about? But God told him what? Because God honors marriage and he honors the sanctity of marriage, of that institution between a man and a woman and God. He told Abraham, listen, to paraphrase, like I feel you as a father, as a man, but don't worry about. He said, listen, you basically to submit to your wife, okay? Because I got Ishmael. Don't worry about him. I'm gonna make him a nation. I think someplace else it said a great nation. I'm not really sure about the great part of great, but he did say he was going to make him a nation. Like, don't worry about him. I got him, basically, right? Because it grieved him, man. As it would grieve any father to send his young child out, not knowing what's going to happen to him. You know what I'm saying? So that shows the compassion and the love Abraham had for his son. People seem to forget, man. Ishmael came from his loins. Ishmael was Abraham's firstborn son, man. Like, what are y'all talking about? And you got these brothers out on the corners, bashing Muslims. Like, look, my thing is, listen, it is what it is. We all know about the colonization of the Arab, the Moors went throughout history trying to force Islam on nations, Islam or die. I get it. I get all that historically, right? but let's scale that back a little bit. When we talk about the relationship of the Ishmaelites and the Israelites, or Ishmael and Isaac specifically, right? That relationship, that's two brothers. What's never talked about, I'm the only one that really mentioned it, is the fact that we are literally genetically tied to the Ishmaelites. I ain't gonna speak on these so-called Arab Muslims. I mean, whatever. I'm talking about the original Ishmaelites that carry the seed and the Y-DNA haplotype of Ishmael. Those are our cousins. Like literally, we are genetically tied to them, right? But they so not in existence. The so-called Arabs would have you believe that the Ishmaelites just kind of disappeared off the faces of earth. There's no more Ishmaelites. I'm gonna bring that up next. But and that's just ridiculous to me. Like they just like and the same thing they kind of say about the 12 tribes of Israel. Well, the 12 tribes of Israel are Christians now. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, man, what are y'all talking about, man? Like, I mean, you hear these things and it's just outrageous. It's ridiculous. The things that people say and believe. So anyway, let's get into that. They really out there saying that the Ishmaelites don't exist no more. Yeah, you know, and they really have the unmitigated gall to claim that the Ishmaelites no longer exist. Like Ishmael and his 12 sons, and their DNA just kind of vanished off the face of the earth. Man, knock it off with the foolishness. 'Cause that's all it is foolishness, right? And it says, this is the general consensus. I don't know if y'all can read this, but I read it for you. It says, they, the Ishmaelites, no longer exist as a people. The last tribe of Kedar was absorbed by the northern Arab tribes. However, the promise of making the Ishmaelites into a great nation, again, the Ishmaelites, okay, into a great nation has already been kept before that happened. As God promised, the Ishmaelites grew to become a great nation that could not be numbered for multitude. But instead of settling down, they built a few cities. They preferred the nomadic life. Ishmael himself was a zebra of a man, that is, a restless wanderer who roamed the wilderness of Paran and lived by his bow. Listen, man, they 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 when Hagar and Ishmael, and if someone can answer this for me, please, because I'm really curious. I've always been curious about this, but I just never really thought enough about it to just really research it. But if any one of y'all could tell me how in the hell did Hagar and um, Ishmael get from somewhere in Canaan or the land of Israel. They were around that area somewhere. How did they end up in Mecca or Saudi Arabia? Y'all know how far Saudi Arabia is from anywhere near the ancient Canaan or Israel or Jerusalem or whatever that area region was called or referred to back then. You know how far that is? And the Bible does not give us any timeline between when Hagar and Ishmael was dwelling in the wilderness to when they ended up where they were supposedly in Mecca. That is a very far away. I mean, did they have a camel or donkey or something? I mean, how did they travel that far? Like that's just something I've always wondered. But like I said, I just never really cared enough about it to just really research it like that. But if someone, if a Muslim brother that speaks like he got some sense and want to contribute to, if they know the answer, or whatever, by all means, I respect Muslims, man. I mean, the ones that respect us and respect me. I have nothing against Muslims. Even the Arab Muslims or whatever that look like with the olive skin. I have nothing against them, as long as they don't have nothing against me and my people. But the a lot of those Arab Muslims, they call us Abid. Abid is like the Arabic N word, but it's like Abid. It's like the Arabic word for slave, and they refer to us as that. Obviously behind our backs. But yeah, if you ever hear a Muslim use that term Abid, it's the Arabic version of the N word. And so, I don't have nothing against them. So I'm saying, like, if anyone has any knowledge on how they got that far, because that's a far away, man. That's a far away in a car. Can you imagine on foot? Like how are they traveling? How did they get that far? I really would like to know. But anyway, not to veer off. That's the general consensus that Ishmaelites no longer exist as a people, and that's just ridiculous foolishness. Okay, Ishmael had 12 sons, and his 12 sons had his Y DNA haplotype, just like Jacob's 12 son had his Y DNA haplotype. Stop playing, man. The Ishmaelites are very much alive and walking around the earth somewhere in Africa, somewhere all over, whatever, right? But the only way we'll know them, that's why it goes back to the DNA. We wouldn't know who the original Ishmaelites were if we don't know what their DNA, their Y-DNA haplotype of Ishmael was, right? And that's why when I ran up on that brother who had Ishmael's DNA, he don't know how huge that was. He was so caught up on the fact that it didn't come back that he was Jacob. I had to get him to see that, man, you are a direct descendant of Ishmael. I've never met a direct descendant. And if you look at him, you're like, oh snap, this dude. I got a picture of him. I'm still kind of torn between picture, posting the brother's pictures. I don't want to make it seem like I'm putting them on blast, or I haven't spoken to the brother, but I just took a copy of this picture because I was like, this dude is a direct descendant of Ishmael. He's an Ishmaelite, man. I'm like, wow, that was just fascinating and exciting to me. But anyway, he didn't see it that way at first, but then I kind of got him to see how cool that really was. But the Ishmaelites do exist, and again, that's why the whole DNA thing is so important, because they would have you believe, and the general consensus is that the Ishmaelites no longer exist as a people, and that is just pure, unadulterated foolishness. On to the next segment, and here's a screenshot. Another straightforward question: who do Arabs descend from? Right? Nothing loaded about the question. Who do they descend from? And here they go with this old BS answer. The Arabian Peninsula was the initial site of the out of Africa migrations that occurred between 125,000 and 60,000 years ago, leading to the hypothesis that the first Eurasian populations were established on the peninsula, and the contemporary indigenous Arabs are direct descendants of these ancient peoples. And that's a bunch of ancient BS, man. Y'all see what I'm saying? But I wanted to include that because that's what they do, and that's what they've done, man. No mention of Ishmael, no mention of Ishmaelites, nothing. But guess what? You remember that cat, Josephus, right? The one who and I told you, if y'all want to do an in-depth study of the Israelites and the Roman destruction of Jerusalem and all that, Josephus had a first-hand account. And please get his book, The Complete Works of Flavius Josephus. And Josephus said, let me bring it up real quick, that is Ishmael the founder of the Arabs? Another straightforward question. Genealogy and association with Arabs. And Ishmael's place as the founder of the Arabs was first stated by Josephus, someone that was there. As Islam became established, the figure Ishmael and those descended from him, the Ishmaelites, became connected and often equated with the term Arab in early Jewish and Christian literature. And that there you go. That's how it happens. Okay? He's basically telling us and saying that Ishmael is the progenitor of the so-called Arab Muslims, but basically throughout time they tried to take him out of it and try to point to other things that connect their race and their nation or whatever the case may be, without giving a black man props as basically being the founder of their nation and their race, right? So there you go, like straight from the horse's mouth. So let me see if I can bring this up real quick. I'm gonna get into like the genealogy. This is a nice um, diagram I found giving you the genealogy of Abraham. It's pretty cool, I think. Like I said, it's never talked about that. Ishmael had 12 sons as well, 12 tribes, right? And one of his sons' names was Massa. Right. And I personally think that term massa, that a lot of slaves would say, was referring to who were their captors, which I think were Ishmaelites or Muslims back then, and that's what I think Massa was referencing. But here's a nice little genealogy of Abraham. I thought it'd be nice to kind of include into the presentation. As you can see, Abraham and of course Sarah. Then they got Hagar kind of. The way they put it together was nice, man. And they got Hagar and Ishmael up under Hagar, and then of course you got to branch off from Isaac, and of course Isaac and Rebecca, and of course they had Jacob, and you can see it just the way y'all can see. I hope y'all can see this clearly, because I'm just kind of going through it, but you could, this is a nice diagram for the genealogy of Abraham. If you can, I would recommend you kind of stopping the video and screenshotting it if if you're interested, like that or whatever. And then it goes into the whole, 12 tribes, and it even has Manasseh and Ephraim, down there under Joseph. Which whoever put this chart together was I mean really cool. I did not do this chart, so I don't know. It looks like it says conforming to Jesus.com. So shout out to them for making this really nice diagram of the family tree of genealogy of Abraham. Good job. I mean, everyone, plays their role and plays their position. I mean, brothers going against brothers. That's been going on since the beginning of time. So-called black on black crime. That's been going on since the beginning of time, man. Don't try to romanticize it like we just got here to America and all of a sudden start not getting along. That's just false. As we used to say back in the days of 5%, that's emphatically non-cipher. We've been battling each other and going against each other from the beginning of time, starting with Cain killing Abel. Like, stop playing. But anyway, if you look at Psalm 83 and 4 just by itself, and it's a very popular scripture and verse, which really it does apply to us today as a people. It says, "Come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel will, be no more in their remembrance." Well, that still applies to this day because, you know, um, Israel is nowhere near the minds of our people. They have no idea that they're Israelite. They have no idea that they came from, our people came from Northeast Africa or Israel, Judea, whatever you want to call it, ancient name, even Canaan, all that's Israel, quote unquote, right? But this is why I teach and preach and speak that you can't take a scripture and verse and create a doctrine from it. You have to preach and teach context because the context of of Psalm 83 and 4, you have to go back to Psalm 83, starting with probably at verse 2 when it says, "For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against your people and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, Come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance." So, in other words, there were so many other nations that hated the Israelites, man, and you had to keep going with the scripture and verse. You can't just stop at 83 and 4. Yeah, it does tell the story in terms of our people being brainwashed, not remembering who they are. Yes, but if you go on further, it goes on to list the people that they're talking about. Because starting at Psalm 83 and verse 5, it says, "For they have consulted together with one consent, one goal, that they are confederate against you." In other words, they basically trying to basically go against God or the God of the Israelites, right? And it said the tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites. He's naming them, all right? The tabernacles of Edom, come on here now, and the Ishmaelites of Moab and the Hagarims, the Gerbal and Ammon, Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Ashur also is joined with them. See what I'm saying? They listened to about what, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight different nations, man, against little old Israel. Come on here, but that's how deep that hate was seeded for the chosen elect, man, for being the chosen nation. I call it the burden of being chosen. And it's just unfortunate our people could not see just how fortunate and blessed they were, because had they stayed under the protection of the Most High, my people, none of this stuff is going on with us today. We just couldn't see how blessed we were. Let me tell you something. First of all, the way I am, God didn't have to show me all of that. I mean, for us to be able to walk through, for him to part the Red Sea, I'm convinced. I'm on board. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, it's crazy to me that our people, the Most High did so much for us, man. He loved us so much, and we wouldn't do right. We just wouldn't do right. Genesis 25 and 12. This is the account of Abraham's son Ishmael, whom Sarah's maidservant, Hagar, the Egyptian, bore to Abraham. And everything comes right back full circle, right? Sarah was on board. She said it was okay. Ishmael was Abraham's firstborn son, but because he felt he couldn't see his father's love, he couldn't see the grief his father had for getting rid of him, he just saw his father as basically rejecting him and sending him away. And because of that rejection, he turns it into hate and disdain for everything that came from Isaac, who was the good son. He was the bastard. He was the, you know, I mean, I feel him, man, as a human being. I feel him. But this is how we got here, right? Ishmael was, a human being. He was a human being, and he had feelings, and he felt rejected by Abraham. I'm sure he did. Like he did. That's the akin to what Ishmael felt, is how kids feel who are, given away for adoption. Like, if y'all can kind of see what I'm saying, I'm not trying to, correlate the two in terms of, it's the same thing. But I mean, can you imagine how children like that feel? I know children who don't want to have anything to do with their birth mother or father. They don't want to find them or whatever, so they gave them up. So that they had this kind of, they don't want to have nothing to do with it. They didn't want to have nothing to do with me, and they gave me away. So, forget them, right? I'm trying to draw that parallel in terms of how Ishmael must have felt, and he put that, he put that animosity and that kind of hate and disdain, not realizing that, the Israelites, which are his half first, well, I hate to say it, his half first, his cousins, close related. He went through all that, man. Of, I mean, capturing us and enslaving us, and just, really, all just to get back at being rejected by Abraham. That's what it boils down to. I hate to simplify it that way, but that's where we are, and that's where it stems from. Ishmael. I don't know, something about him, man. I just, I don't look at him the same way. A lot of these brothers on the corners disrespecting Muslims, and just they have no idea, man, what they're talking about. You understand? Because Muslims, Ishmaelites. I'm gonna say that. Let me stop saying Muslims. Ishmaelites are under the tent of Shem, man. Stop playing. They are God's people too. He told him he's gonna make him the leader of a great nation. Like, what are y'all talking about? Why all the disrespect? I mean, I get it from the standpoint that they had a hand in our people's, enslavement, this and that. I get it. I get all that. But that's all prophecy. That's all prophetic, right? Because if our people had done what they're supposed to do, none of it, we're not even talking about none of it, because no one would be able to touch us as a nation. Well, anyway, I'm gonna leave it there. No, I don't want to go on and on. I went a little beyond the 30 minutes I wanted to go. I don't want to, because I never want to take the presentations longer than 30. But this was really interesting. I wanted to give Ishmael more light in terms of, humanizing him, what he must have felt, why he did kind of what he did, and where it came from a place of rejection of his father, and rejection of his father's God. They say the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Well, he was, in his mind, he was rejecting the God of Abraham, that would allow him to just get rid of him and reject him, basically. So that's where all that kind of, hate and disdain came from, or whatever. So anyway, that's that, man. I just wanted to really give that some shine. Hope y'all enjoyed this presentation, man. And y'all know how I do. Y'all keep up keep liking the videos and commenting, and I'm gonna keep bringing the heat, man. So I hope y'all enjoyed this. Until the next time, this Dr. Ephraim signing off, saying Shalom, elect.